Yeah, dude. I think you are understanding this like better than I am, and I think you're right about the full access key thing and function call access key thing. This is an ugly broadcast pre-shower, basically pre-coffee, but I wanted to like just talk about it instead. And Osmosis from Cosmos has like this really awesome team. I have like some of my favorite all stars are in Osmosis, and I remember this. This was their ICNS, so Interchain Name Service, that came out as one of the name services. And this is like something that I always thought was really cool, which is like your Ethereum public key to your BEC32 address. So BEC32 is like a Bitcoin, and also in Cosmos, it's how you like basically say, I have the same key, but I'm gonna be using this different address to go to this chain. Now I'm gonna be using this different address with a different prefix to go to this chain. But the fundamental is basically being like, oh yeah, just give me your pub key and we'll figure out your address. And so I was screwing around last night, and I haven't like deployed this. I just did this until late, and I was like, built, we're done. So this is like, untested. But basically, the idea that you could add a key, and you're like, here's my public key. This is the chain agnostic improvement proposal for like which chain I would like this key to be on. And as a reminder, like Kype 2 is like the chain agnostic standard. So you have like these prefixes basically. Um, Special shout out to, I know Pedro Gomez worked a lot on this, and Simon Warta from Cosmos and Cosmosm taught me like a ridiculous amount. It's like a really great mentor. So basically, we're like using the Kype 2 that already exists. So you can add a key, and if I go to my bookmarks here, I'm going to derive address, and we're basically saying, okay, is the curve ED25519? Is it EDDSA, ECDSA? Then you figure out what the prefix is, right? So essentially, you call this contract, and it's like, okay, you want this public key to be like designated as like your Bitcoin key that like you will use, like you can sign to Bitcoin directly. Why not? And so what you do is you add this key to the contract, and it's like, let me help you out. Let me show you what your Bitcoin addresses would be. And actually, this is kind of interesting because um, I learned this at Proximity that like your Bitcoin address is actually different for testnet. They do it an interesting way, and there's a bunch of different kinds of like Bitcoin addresses. There's like SegWit, Legacy, Taproot, all this stuff. So the idea being that you would add this key and it would return you like here's like your Bitcoin addresses, and we could figure out if you want to have like a canonical one. And so anyway, yeah, this would be then stored on your contract, and this is still super early, but I do think it makes sense to be like, okay, well, if you're adding a key that is like bound to a chain, and currently I think it just makes sense to say, don't use the same seed phrase for different curves. You're just sort of like showing more about what your private key does mathematically. So we're saying like you add one public key, it will just go to one chain. And when you do that, you don't have to bind it to a external chain, but you could just add like a regular full access key, function call access key if you want. But if you do add it when it's bound to a chain, then you got to call this method, basically. And what else? I feel like I don't really know why I say this, but I feel like instead of like chain keys.mic.near, I feel like it would be more like I like I would like to segregate this to be like under like something where it's like these are like my extensions to like my account, because this is going to be doing like kind of heavy lifting stuff for me. Um, what else can I mention? The other thing that'd be kind of cool is that if you have added a key and you said this is for Ethereum, this is for Solana, this is for Bitcoin, and literally the address for those networks is in your own contract state, then like you could say, all right, tell me about my portfolio, and use Outlayer to be like, okay, we're going to do an Oracle request and see, let's look through their external chain keys and see how much money they got, basically. So you could just do an Oracle like off-chain request using Outlayer easily. So then it's like your near account is like teasing at like it's like an actual like keychain where you're like, no, this is my key to near, this is my key to these different chains, and you could just directly call a chain, and it would be like known that your near account is associated with it, and you could see like a holistic like picture of your like cross chain portfolio. That'd be cool. Um, oh yeah, what about Monday? Does that work for you, dude? I didn't realize Christmas is next week. I mean, I totally realized that. Uh, what else, dude? Yeah, and also like I'm not like strongly held on any of this stuff. I think it's just like good exploration. But right now, this contract is just talking about adding and deleting keys. It's not doing any of the smart account stuff we talked about, where we're like, doing promises to cross contract calls. The one thing I might add to this is, actually just going back here. So they are inside the smart contract. They are like verifying like an offline signature, basically. And this is, as far as I understand, exactly how ERC 4337 works as well. Is that you are a flow is that you like just do an offline signature, you broadcast that to the endpoint, which is different than the RPC, and then it looks at your just plain text, right? And it says, okay, cool, like we can confirm this person, like that this is, I guess this is Ethereum, so like this is the pub key to that EOA that is now like the main point of entry, the true on-chain point of entry is this little contract, like simple account.sol that we were talking about on Twitter. Um, so it's just this idea that like you're just perhaps this is how relayers already work in Near, but you're just signing like plain text, but it's like proving that you have a key that can be validated once you get in there. So that's the other thing that I would add to like this is right now it's just like we're doing transactions to like, you know, add a key, and you could just sort of like call into this with a plain text payload that can be validated on chain to confirm that you have permission. So that would be the other way of doing this, and probably helpful for relaying and stuff. I'm a little fuzzy on some of these details, and honestly, I need a lot of help to understand. I think Jas, you know a lot more than I do about maybe like the interaction between the MPC and in and intents. And that's like a dumb question, but I still just kind of don't understand like if we are broadcasting a transaction into Near that then creates a signature that I can retrieve and broadcast on the Bitcoin network. So we're already broadcasting into Near to do this. So why wouldn't that interaction just be I use my key on Bitcoin directly? Um, and I feel like I'm not understanding it properly. So anyway, like that's just like I'm honestly like I think this is like a neat thing to explore, and I want to learn. And I'm not like this is the best way, but I do think that 4337 is like a really really like monumental like way to reframe how you do it. That you're like broadcasting to your smart account, and that gets to decide if it's going to do a cross contract call. Um, and you're right that like the tension comes in that like if you add a full access key through a contract, well, you can still like delete your entire account directly, right? And I think that's a fine tension because I think what we're doing is sort of experimental, and we're just like, okay, well, what if we just had this like kind of like experimental convention where we try just like calling into my smart account for most things, and in that case, like your metadata is all like saved on your key, right? And we try to make the metadata like super flexible, so it's like future proof. Um, what else here? No, this is all like normal. Yeah, I think I ran out of thoughts, so I'm gonna drink more coffee. And thanks for joining the ugly morning session. Yeah, dude. Thanks for always building Jazz. You're like an awesome like inspiration, and love to like brainstorm, spitball. I don't even care if it goes anywhere. It's just like this is uh like a worthy pursuit and to check out, especially around the holiday times. Sweet. See ya.